Evening, everyone. This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to this meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and on the district website. It was also sent to the West Bend Community Memorial Library, the Daily News, WRYU, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I'm just going to pause to ask Superintendent Wimmer to confirm that this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We recognize a quorum of our board. We have 6 board members present. Dr. Temez, thank you for joining us by teleconference. We have 7 board members present. Because Dr. Temez is joining us by teleconference, I'll be conducting our roll call votes individually, and Melanie here will remind me when I mess that up, so thank you for that in advance. Also, I want to welcome our newest board member, Joe Pickler. Welcome to the board. And also, Melanie, I understand both of you have received the oath, is that correct? Correct. Great, so we are ready then to proceed. And in fact, our first action item then is the approval of this agenda, which was posted in advance. I'd move to approve this agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
There. Sorry, I've got my papers here. I really do. Thank you. We have a motion and second to approve the agenda tonight. Motion and second. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Zweigert votes yes. Mr. Pickler?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Ms. Kruger?
Yes.
Dr. Temez?
Yes.
Ms. Aragot?
Yes.
And Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That motion carries, and we have an approved agenda. Our first item now is to recognize retirees. What I'm going to do, well, let me start with the board. Wants to take the opportunity to recognize several individuals who are retiring from the district after many years of service to our staff, to our community, to our students. Supervisors, administrators, and colleagues all have shared many words of recognition for these individuals, and we'd like to read some of the comments that were shared with the board regarding each of these outstanding members of the West Bend School District team. So before we begin, I'd like to invite our retirees to come forward. I'm going to ask you to stand in front of the podium, and that way our audience can get a very good look at you, and we're going to celebrate you as a group. So come on forward, don't be shy, and stand in front of the podium. Fantastic, right, thank you so much. So Kelly, I think you're going to read some words first about Mr. Penterman.
Yes. First, so Jason Penterman from Badger Language Arts team, please step forward to be recognized. Since August 16th, 2001, Jason has journeyed through various roles in education, from teaching high school English to guiding students in the Library Media Center. His career accumulated in shaping young minds with the Badger Language Arts team since 2015. He has been well known and respected as an advocate for students and employees throughout his time in West Bend. Throughout his career, Jason's insight, steady hand, and dedication to student growth have profoundly impacted many lives. Jason, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and thank you for your years of dedicated service.
And Melanie, I believe you're next.
All right, next would Michelle Loffer from Badger's math team please step forward to be recognized. For over 3 decades, beginning August 26, 1991, Michelle has dedicated herself to the service of students, starting at Silverbrook and later transitioning to the 8th grade Badger team in the 2014-2015 school year. Michelle consistently provided knowledge, support, and inspiration to both students and colleagues. She can always be counted on to share kind words, insightful advice, and a supportive smile. Her steadfast commitment to education and the enduring impact she's had on the school community will long be cherished by the staff at Badger and throughout the district. Michelle, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and to thank you for your years of dedicated service.
And June, I think you have some words to share next.
Next would Tracy Gross, McLean's administrative assistant to the principal. Please step forward to be recognized. Tracy, or Mrs. Gross, as the McLean team affectionately calls her, has been a driving force at McLean since June 3rd, 2008, dedicating the past 17 years to her McTiger team. As an exceptional leader and constant source of encouragement, she has inspired so many with her incredible work ethic and organizational talents. Her dedication and passion have made her the best boss McLean could have ever hoped for, and her absence will be deeply felt. Sorry, Mr. Kasich, but Mrs. Gross is also the boss. The name Mrs. Gross is well known and respected in our community, and her inspiring legacy will continue to guide the McLean staff even as she moves on to the new chapter in her life. Tracy, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and to thank you for your years of dedicated service.
Chris, I think you have some words to share next.
Yes, sir. Next up is Mr. Rob Nichols. If you'd like to stand forward and get recognized from Silverbrook 6th grade team. Since 1993, Rob has been an invaluable presence at Silverbrook, shaping the lives of students both in and out of the classroom. His teaching journey included 7th grade math, 8th grade social studies, and 6th grade math. Beyond academics, Rob's dedication to athletics shone through his coaching of baseball at all levels, his support of JV football and varsity basketball, and his remarkable 2-decade tenure leading the 7th grade girls and boys basketball teams. More recently, he demonstrated his initiative by establishing and running the Silverbrook Intramural Program for the past 3 years, as well as founding the incredibly popular Sports Card Trading Club. Known as a supportive colleague, a quiet leader, and a steady voice of reason, Rob's commitment to the West Bend community is further underscored by the graduation of his 3 children with his wife Sandy from the West Bend high schools as well. So Rob, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and to thank you for your many years of dedicated service. Thank you.
Joe, I think you have some words to share next.
Yep, next would Sally Hoyer from the high school's Family Consumer Science Department please step forward to be recognized. After nearly 35 years of dedicated service, starting on August 27, 1990, we honor the remarkable career of Sally, our beloved family and consumer science teacher. Sally, you have been an incredible guiding force in the lives of our students, teaching essential life skills with such passion, patience, and purpose. Your classroom was a special place where students discovered their confidence, unleashed their creativity, and developed compassion for others. Sally has built up many programs in her decades in West Bend. During your career, thousands of students have enjoyed the deliciousness of the Nifty Nibble and the school's culinary arts program. You have built this program into a powerhouse. Sally, your legacy is woven into the very fabric of the high school community, and your positive influence will be felt for many years to come, both in the district and throughout the West Bend community. Sally, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and to thank you for your years of dedicated service.
So I'd like to share some words regarding Andy Kasich, McLean's principal. So thank you for stepping forward. Andy began his career in the West Bend School District in 1996 as a school counselor at Silverbrook Middle School. From there, he went on to become the assistant principal at Silverbrook for a few years. He then moved on to become the principal of McLean Elementary School, where he has served the district for the past 17 years. Throughout his tenure, McLean has remained a pillar of excellence, both academically and as a core foundation of the West Bend community. Andy knows his students, their interests, and how to support them, and he does the exact same for his staff. In addition, he has served as a mentor for many other administrators in the district. He shows an unwavering commitment to educational excellence and compassion for students, for families, and staff. Andy, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and to thank you for your years of dedicated service. And Kelly, you have some words to share.
Yes. Next, Marietta Bailey, please step forward. Marietta is one of the high school's media center paraprofessionals. Today, we celebrate a nearly 29-year career of Mrs. Bailey helping students celebrate literature. Her dedicated service began on September 30th, 1996. For nearly 3 decades, she has been the heart of the high school library, a familiar face for generations of students, instilling a love for reading in thousands of kids who walk through the library doors. She has helped students become researchers and lifelong learners. Whether recommending the perfect book, guiding a class through a project, or simply offering a quiet, welcoming space, her presence has truly made the high school a better place. Marietta, the school board wishes to congratulate you on your retirement and thank you for your years of service.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming tonight. Today's recognition is not the end of celebrating the impressive careers of all these individuals. The district will also be recognizing these employees and others at our annual recognition program later this month. In the meantime, and I will just say this personally, several of you folks I know have presented regularly to the school board, and we've seen you at many events. We just please want to have you accept the board's congratulations and heartfelt thanks to each of you for everything you have done for the students, the staff, and for the families of this community. Once again, a round of applause for these folks. As I often tell our student presenters, this is a public meeting and we invite you certainly to stay. But we also understand if you have other items to attend to. So thank you to those who attended tonight. In the meantime, we'll continue to move forward with our school business. Thank you again to everyone for coming. Let's wait a moment for the room to clear a bit, and then we will move on with our consent agenda. On our public participation. Next on our agenda is public participation. I do not have public participation comment cards. I don't see any in the audience. Now we will move to our consent agenda. On our consent agenda tonight include minutes of the April 14th, 2025 regular board meeting, 1 contract, 1 resignation, and no retirements. And I believe that concludes the consent agenda. Are there any questions on items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would move to approve this consent agenda. Is there a second? June, thank you for seconding that. We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Excuse me one moment. There we go. Ms. Kruger? Yes. Ms. Aragot? Yes. Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Dr. Temez?
Yes.
Ms. Lang?
Yes.
And Mr. Pickler?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously, and our consent agenda is approved. All right, I'll just go back to my papers here. We move to the reports section of our agenda. Our first report tonight is a referendum update. Superintendent Wimmer, I believe you're going to be giving this update.
Yes, it's a very exciting point. We thank our community for their support at our fall referendum. And tonight we have representatives from both EUA as well as Findorf, our partners in both architect and all things construction and costing and estimating, to give you a little bit more in depth of all the work that we've been doing since then.
Hi, everyone. As Jen said, we're from EUA and Findorf. So I'm Jackie Michaels. I'm a senior project manager with EUA. I've been part of this effort with you along this journey from pre-ref on, and I've been focusing on actually all 6 of those projects.
Hello, I'm Katie LaCourte, also with EUA, Senior Design Architect, and I also have been along the ride pre-referendum and continuing to post-referendum to focus on the design of the project.
We have 2 other people pictured here from EUA. Kit Daly, she is our client executive and engagement specialist. You saw her quite a bit in pre-referendum, and she has also kind of in the background working with us on the development of these projects. And Kim Frericks, who has not been in front of you yet, she's a senior design architect and has been part of the planning efforts for the 2 small projects that we're going to talk about today, Green Tree Elementary and McLean Elementary.
I'm Kyle Laced with Findorf. Been along from pre-ref all the way through and looking forward to starting construction here soon.
I'm Justine Behrens, new face. I transitioned on to the project around Christmas. So will be the main point of contact from Findorf's end for all of the West Bend projects. So really looking forward to getting started. And there's one more person pictured here. His name is Derek. He will be kind of the front of the work for the summer 2025 McLean and Green Tree projects. So just want to mention him too.
All right, so our agenda this evening, the goal of this, since we haven't talked to you since pre-referendum, is really to re-ground us in the overall project work, the design process, and our schedules. And then we're going to kick off these updates with Green Tree and McLean. Specifically, we want to talk about the scope and budget and schedule. And then the bulk of what we're going to be presenting is our efforts for Jackson Elementary and that design update. And to keep in mind, this is a part 1 of 2. We're going to come back to you the end of May with more information on the Jackson design as we are continuing to work through that process. So what we started out with, so currently we have 5 elementary schools, plus Rolfs, the ESC, a 5-6 with Silverbrook, and the middle school with Badger, and the high schools. When we are all done with this work, we're going to end with 3 elementary schools, Decorah and Fair Park, are closing. Silverbrook is going to convert to another elementary school. Badger will then change to a 6-8, and our high schools will remain in the same grade configuration. Work is happening, as you know, at Green Tree and McLean, Jackson, Silverbrook, Badger, and the high school over the course of this time. And with that, the ballot, we thought we would reshare the ballot information, ballot language, as well as the costs per each of those sites associated with the scope. And we will get into McLean, Green Tree, and the Jackson efforts tonight, as those are the projects currently in process. So we're really excited to share what these updates are. All right, and then schedule-wise, so this is where we are. We're only showing the projects we're currently working on, as the other projects will follow, and otherwise this timeline would look very elongated. But being that the green box is indicating April, we are well into the thick of the Jackson Elementary design, and we are rearing towards the end of McLean and Green Tree's efforts, with the intent that we will be working on McLean and Green Tree for construction yet this summer. So that is a change from what you originally saw pre-referendum. We actually moved those projects up a year with an effort to really make sure that safety and security is being addressed as soon as possible, and those two have the biggest secure entry sequence impacts for their projects, so we did move those up. And then just to reground us in the design process holistically, so the graphic under Discover, that is what we had shared pre-referendum. That is just a planning diagram per se on what the idea of what the project is. Once the community approved us to move forward, we immediately got to work on Jackson. I'll use that as the example where we can then move into schematic design, where that level of detail is talking about square footages and adjacencies and really grounding us in what the scope is. And then from there, we start to layer more detail on. So there we start to talk about casework and door hardware, and the engineers start to get engaged on what those building systems are, how are we starting to integrate together. Construction documents is the last design phase for EUA to work through on these projects, and that is where we actually create kind of a set of instructions. It's the construction documents to give to Findorf that tells you how or what the intent is for building those renovations or new construction. And then we end with how the building's actually going to operate. And along the way, we are doing budget checks at the end of each one of those phases, and which Findorf is facilitating. And then as we roll through each one of those phases, depending on the project, the idea of changes that need to come, that we made some assumptions pre-referendum about what the projects were going to be, what that scope was in terms of capital maintenance, and how we were going to address closing buildings, et cetera. As we move further into the process, the cost of change impacts at a greater and greater speed, has a larger impact as we move through. All right.
All right. talking about Green Tree. So first, we're going to walk you through where we are in the process. So as Jackie described, we're in the design development phase. As she mentioned, since we advanced the project, we've been moving very quickly and are about halfway through the design process. So the drawings that you're going to see are going to be more in alignment with the graphic shown here, that we've developed the criteria and adjacencies associated. We've begun to get our engineers involved in some more detailed information regarding casework and furniture, and soon we'll be producing those construction documents for Findorf to build off of this summer. We wanted to bring you back also to these guiding principles that we developed as a part of the pre-referendum effort. Guiding principles serve as our North Star to ensure that what we're doing at along every step of the way really embodies the culture of West Bend. And so the guiding principles that we developed as part of pre-ref really apply to every project at a high level and then in a different way for each specific project. But the idea that we even moved up to Green Tree and McLean to address safety and security just shows you how we are working those guiding principles in everything that we do as a part of this project. This is a floor plan of Green Tree. I'm going to walk you through high level the scope, and then we're going to zoom into the office area, which is the most impactful thing that's happening at Green Tree. But as a reminder of the high-level scope, first and foremost, we are creating a secure entry adjacent to the vestibule. Right now, the admin offices are in the middle of the building, which requires visitors to enter the building first before they have to present their credentials to a receptionist or admin staff. Also, the admin staff can't see directly out of the door. So a big effort as a part of the referendum scope was to move that office area into the two classrooms that are most immediately adjacent to the entry to ensure that we can create that secure entry sequence. In addition, as you know, Green Tree was not well utilized or is not currently well utilized to date. So as a result, because it is not full, a lot of resources and programs that don't necessarily need an entire classroom are living in a large classroom. So as we are moving 5th grade into Green Tree and also early learning, we need to reoccupy those large classrooms. So as we move the office into 2 of these classrooms, we are backfilling that with more size-appropriate spaces to reflect those resources. So I'll give you an example is interventions, speech, and EL that just require really an office-size space. Previously, were existing in a large classroom. So again, getting back to that guiding principle of efficient operations, ensuring that every square footage is being used as efficiently as possible. I will say that we also, as a part of this process, we had a heavy engagement process with staff. We did a series of interviews to ensure as we are making these efficient decisions that they also embody the culture of each individual school and are going to align with their teaching philosophy. So I mentioned we're bringing over 5th grade, and then we're also bringing over early learning. So as a part of bringing over early learning, some of that scope is adding restrooms to classrooms that didn't previously have restrooms so that early learning can exist in those classrooms. So you'll see that indicated here in the gray. This is where we're adding adding restrooms to those classrooms and modifying some flooring alongside of that. And then we are expanding some restrooms to make sure that they are ADA accessible. So that kind of holistically covers the scope at Green Tree. And I will go over the secure entry now. So we're going to zoom into that secure entry area. So first and foremost, at the secure entry, we are modifying the glazing. So we are applying laminated glazing at the entries to ensure that it is a little bit more robust than your typical glass at those areas. I mentioned the idea of ensuring that the receptionist has sight lines to those who are entering the building. So positioning the reception desk such that it has visibility to the entry and the visitor parking lot was critical. And then creating a secure entry sequence so that a visitor approaches the building, they are buzzed into a secure vestibule, and then buzzed into the main office prior to receiving entry to the overall school. So once they present their credentials and check in, they then can be buzzed into the rest of the building. And then creating areas of controlled access, so where those staff and admin who enter the building can fob in, so they can go directly through the vestibule and not necessarily have to go through reception. There is a few other pieces of the scope that go alongside what I've described at a high level. If you remember the facilities report that we did back in 2023, we identified capital maintenance district-wide, and there was a category in the red, which was identifying the most critical capital maintenance. A part of the referendum scope was picking up some of the things in the red list that were most imminent or important to address. And so some of that scope is listed here. I won't go over every bullet point, but there's some additional scope beyond the renovations described that are addressing deferred capital maintenance. This is also going to be a phased project, so most of the work will be occurring this summer and just slightly into the fall, but there are a few projects that will be pushed until next summer. Are there any questions on Green Tree before I move on to McLean?
One question?
yeah,
Go
one
ahead.
question.
No, for you.
Is this kind of thing, like thinking about that entrance, just so I can wrap my head around, not a picture, thinking like Badger, correct? Like where's, okay.
Yep.
Just, thank you.
I'm going to pass it over to Findorf to talk about the schedule and budget impacts before I move on to McLean.
Thanks, Katie. So on the screen, you can see a schematic of approximate schedule for the Green Tree project. The blue bar represents a design phase, so we're in that right now. The yellow block represents the time where we, Findorf, will bid out the project to the masses. And then the red indicates construction. These are approximate timelines. We really, the main point is that we're going to get started with construction in June, and then we'll be wrapping up this phase of the project early fall. So you can also see a budget up there on the screen. It's $5.46 million. We're right on track with pre-ref budgets. So great news, and we're excited to continue on with bidding out the project.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So my understanding is we did change the timeline of this, right? This was going to be later, moved up earlier.
Correct.
There are many things about this I like. It looks like a lot of this construction is happening over summer, so it shouldn't be as disruptive. I like that a lot, and we're focusing on things like safety first. I like that too. Are there any disadvantages, or is there anything bad about moving this sooner? I can't find anything, but I wanted to ask.
You know, it's really an overall advantage to the district. You're staying ahead of cost increases. You're getting some of this work done early. It's a shorter timeline to bid out, but we have lots of contacts. We are fully confident we'll be able to get a good array of bidders for this project.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Other questions? Please proceed. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. And then just a quick reminder about these budgets. So a reminder of the pre-ref budgets. They were created off of a conceptual plan. So we knew what work needed to be done. We knew there needed to be ADA updates to the restrooms. We knew there was a secure entry, and we were able to provide a good budget based off that. But those were not obviously final budgets. Now that we've worked into the design development phase, which is kind of a middle design budget check, design's not quite done yet, but we're certainly looking at better information than we were before. We used EUA's plans to actually bid out this work. We have defined scopes. So these budgets are still based off of current events. They're based off of similar projects that we've done in the past, but they are not yet final construction budgets and estimates. So just a quick reminder of where we are.
Right, moving on to McLean. So there are a lot of similarities in terms of the overall goals of the project for McLean as outlined in Green Tree. So holistically, we are creating a secure entry as the primary chunk of the scope, and then backfilling the spaces that the previous main office was located with other resources like student services and offices that are currently existing in full-size classrooms to maximize efficiency of the building. We are also integrating 4K and early learning in this space, only 2 classrooms instead of 4, and so those rooms also require adding restrooms to accommodate those. And then we are doing a overall restroom renovations here as well, windows and some additional capital maintenance as outlined in the previous slides with Green Tree. So I'll kind of go over the similar sequence, walking you through the secure entry here as well. So first and foremost, as we mentioned, laminated glazing at the entry, just like in Green Tree, maximizing sight lines with where the reception desk is located, and then creating that secure entry sequence, so buzzing into the vestibule, then the office, then the main building, and then controlled access for staff and admin at select locations. Again, this is the kind of full list of scope outlined in 2 phases, what's happening this summer and into fall versus what's going to happen next summer. And I'll let Justine talk about the schedule.
And then again, you see a similar timeline for McLean as you do Green Tree. These projects are intended to work hand in hand. So we again have a start of construction in June, and we'll be wrapping up with work in early fall. And again, we are right on target with budget and looking forward to bidding out the project in May. Any questions about McLean?
Well, I think you just addressed it, and that is the work is very similar, so I'm assuming if we're retaining contractors, there are economies of scale that we get from replacing lots of windows at one time or fixing doors all at one time.
That is correct.
That's generally true?
Yes.
Yeah. Other questions?
I just have a question, and this might even be more for you, but the 4K classrooms that are moving are just the ones coming from Rolf's, right? And then the other partner sites will still remain there?
Correct, that's a very good clarification. So we have a community model. The one program that we're talking about is just at Rolf. So you still have robust 4K options and opportunities within the community at those sites. We're simply talking about the district managed Head Start, which would go to Green Tree, as well as there's some early learning and some special ed classrooms located at Rolf's that would be moved to McLean. Great clarification.
I just got 2 questions quick. One is maybe more of a IT question, but the question is, so obviously we have existing security features and things like that at some of our other schools. So is there anything from like Decorah, which is going to, cease operations that we can use and move to the new sites? Or does all that stuff need to get completely updated and brand new? Thank you, Tim. Yes.
We'll just introduce Mr. Harder. Thank you for
Good
coming to
evening,
the
Board.
podium.
So, Chris, what we will do is, so when we look at Green Tree and McLean, there are things that we are already planning in our cycle to replace. So I know that, for example, the intercom button that you hit when you go into Green Tree, that will get reinstalled. If I have an ad, we will look at adding or using from other places. What will happen is as we will change our cycle over the next 2 years, that when we leave those buildings, if it's valuable to us, we will take that with us and use that and plan that out at that point in time, so.
I think one of the things that comes to mind most when you think about like a lot of the cameras that are at Decorah, you can take and install those in other places, put those in the cycle of replacement because they have life. That's exactly kind of
So
what's
yeah,
in
we
play.
started, ironically, we started today in our technology meeting around, these are all the things we have to take out of Green Tree, and these are where they're going once these nice, fine folks and their people are done, so.
Yeah, great. And then my easy question was, so I work in municipal government too. So typically, we're really trying to hit those bids in wintertime in order to get, asphalt plants and things like that. And grant, this is a different scope. So tell me why you think we can get a competitive bid here in 1 month in the middle of summer.
For a specific scope like asphalt or for a different
No,
scope?
I'm just saying in my example, we'd be going to bid in wintertime for a project in summer. So, but you assured us that, don't worry, it's going to still be competitive in the middle of summer. So
No,
can
I
you give me
think-
some reassurance of that?
Definitely. So the advantage here is that we do understand that some scope is going to bleed into the school year, and we've been working with the district to make sure that's as least disruptive as possible. The advantage of that, though, is that there are a lot of contractors who are finishing up work that needs to be done by middle of August or middle of September. Their crews then free up. So there may be a lot of availability there for the finish work as we get to the very end of summer and early September. So we're kind of playing on those gaps to help us out here.
One other quick thing.
Yep.
Why don't you step to the microphone? Sorry, we just want to be sure.
The
Thank
other
you.
thing is, people have known about this project for a while, as we've been talking about pre-ref, and now, getting ready to go out to bid. We've been letting people know about this work. It's coming, so they're excited for it. They know that it's a really efficient, 2 buildings happening at the same time, starting June, going into the early fall. So there are people that are ready for these drawings to come out in the next couple of weeks.
Is it a separate bidding process for each building? Or since, a lot of the similar work is being done, will the fire alarm system vendor be the same for both buildings, or will they be bid completely
We're
separately?
looking to combine those two, and then with the breakout per school, so we know what school costs, what the costs are for each school as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move to Jackson, I just wanted to hit on a question that was asked about the disadvantages of moving up the two small projects. The only disadvantage that we see is that there's a lot of pressure on your admin team to make decisions, and they've done an excellent job committing tons of time and extra energy outside of their day jobs to help us do our jobs. And one advantage of that, of doing these things in parallel, is I know district equity is really important across the board. So as we make decisions for Green Tree and McLean and Jackson at the same time, we can ensure that it's going to roll out in an equitable way to the best of our ability. Obviously, we're doing renovations in 2 schools and a new school in another place. So to the best of our ability, but the district is really trying hard to make sure that's the case.
So I can speak to that a little bit more. When she's speaking about equity, what we're talking about is Jackson's certainly under design for a brand new building, but we worked with like our district nurse around what does a similar experience look like across all of our elementary schools for our student. So, making sure we have the secure entry present at every campus, making sure I have adequate facilities at each campus. So it isn't that I have this new school and all these amazing amenities and everything else languished. It's the design is paralleling each other so that when we turnkey on some of these things, they're all standard across the district.
All right, moving on to Jackson. So first, we wanted to highlight where we're at in the design process. As Jackie mentioned, we're about 1/3 of the way through design. The process is longer because we have more things to do with the new building. We are going to be bidding this out in the winter, construction from spring of '26 through the summer of '27 for opening in fall of '27. So where we're at with Jackson is we're at the schematic design level. We're just completing that currently. So what that means is we've started to define the criteria, all of the spaces, adjacency. We are going to see what looks like a conceptual level floor plan. We've positioned the building on the site, and that is where we're really at from a high level perspective. So we're going to share that process with you and how we landed where we are today. And that process really starts with stakeholder engagement. We've worked really hard to engage a variety of stakeholders, from staff and admin to students, to inform our decisions, again, ensuring that what we design really reflects not just a boilerplate school, but really reflects the West Bend and Jackson community. And so what that looks like is we did several things. We engaged all staff, but we also engaged a smaller visioning team so that we could go a lot deeper with conversations. And we did exercises like what's shown on the screen. This activity is called Stop, Start, Continue. And we talk about what they want to stop doing from a teaching and learning perspective at current Jackson, what they want to start doing with this opportunity at New Jackson, and then what gems of culture exist at current Jackson that we want to carry over. So one thing that we learned that was resounding across all stakeholder groups is the importance of the library, how it's really the heart of the current Jackson, and they want it to continue to be that for New Jackson. I mentioned also student engagement, engaging students to see what they think New Jackson should look like. I'm just going to call your attention to this center image where one student drew an image of the library. So even at the student level, they acknowledge the significance and culture surrounding the library that's important to carry over to New Jackson.
I just want to note, it also looks like every room needs a slide. Is that correct? Okay. Just want to make sure that priority is up
Yeah,
there.
the zip line requests, the slides, a lot of those.
Yeah, we didn't want to squash their vision too early, but there's some liability concerns with
Maybe
some
a
of the
well-placed
requests.
slide outside as part of that playground. We'll
Yes,
get there eventually.
One more thing to note, I'm going to come back to this slide really quickly. We also went on school tours, and the driver behind this is really to show teachers, sometimes you can't be what you can't see, and so seeing what modern construction looks like and feels like and how other districts have translated their pedagogy into a built environment is helpful to see, not because we're going to replicate that. What's appropriate for one district is not appropriate for another district. The goals really drive the facility design, but it is helpful to see what's possible and really open eyes to how schools are built today versus how they were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s of the current district. So, from a comprehensive feedback standpoint, bulleted here are some highlights that I'll go over. First, from an instructional space standpoint, we really heard a lot of a desire for flexibility, calm, safe, naturally daylit spaces, and universal design, which really just means that in designing for students with disabilities as well as well-bodied students, so just making sure that the facilities address all students. And then balanced learning environments. So there's a desire for kind of sensory, tactile, engaging spaces so students can really have hands-on learning, but also balancing that alongside technology. So making sure that we provide facilities that allow for both of those types of learning. Across the board, wanting a separate gym and cafeteria, which we know is something that will now be equitable across the district in terms of amenities offered at the elementary level. And then a desire for outdoor learning, so the ability to leverage nice days to use that for outdoor learning where feasible. Addressing traffic and drop-off. I know current Jackson doesn't even have a parking lot or safe way to drop off students currently. So that is really a priority of ours to address that, to ensure that queuing is minimized to the most degree possible. And then holistically focusing on wellness, safety, accessibility, and incorporating the student voice and expression into the design. So again, coming back to that feedback combined with guiding principles from the pre-referendum effort, we expanded upon those in a set of guiding principles for Jackson specifically. I won't read through these, but I will let you read them at your leisure. Fundamentally holding true to safety and security, welcoming and accessibility, and then adaptable and flexible spaces. And we'll show you how we've done this through the design to date. A big part of these visioning sessions, beyond what I've shared so far, is teasing out of admin and staff how we're putting these puzzle pieces together. What are the maximum adjacencies to help teachers do their best teaching and students do their best learning? So here's kind of an array of all of the spaces and all the puzzle pieces. And then we go through exercises where we ask specific questions to help inform us of what we should put next to each other, essentially, combining that with our best practice and expertise. But one question that we ask is talking heavily at the front end about controlled access. So what spaces do we need to be accessible after hours for events and kind of separated out from the rest of the building? Things like the gym, the cafeteria, the library obviously became important as a community amenity. And then what spaces do want to be compartmentalized and more secure? So those are your more instructional spaces, special ed spaces, music and art. We asked about resource distribution. So what spaces are centralized? Gym and cafeteria are examples of those. And then what resources are distributed? So things like special ed, rather than having distinct special ed classrooms, having smaller special ed spaces adjacent to the classroom environment so that the district's admin and staff can push that push-in model rather than the pull-out model. So it makes resources like special ed, intervention, EL become more accessible to the students when they're closer to the classrooms and more distributed throughout the school. Which brings me to the topic of learning communities. So This is an example of something that has transitioned over time of how schools are built today versus how they were built. And this really relates to what schools were designed to do. So when schools were designed in the 70s, they were really designed to teach 30 students the same thing at the same time, preparing them for a world that was more aligned with industry. As industry has changed over time and problem solving and project-based learning is really important for the careers of tomorrow, school design has changed alongside that. So instead of having classrooms sized for 30 students aligned along a corridor, like you're seeing on the left, we design what we call a learning community. And what that means is that we have still our traditional classrooms, but between the classroom and the corridor, there are some smaller ancillary spaces that are flexible to provide those resources like special ed, intervention, EL, project-based learning. They can be used for multiple purposes, but they're strategically designed so that the teacher can supervise them while teaching in her classroom, encouraging students to utilize those critical thinking and problem-solving skills to prepare them for the careers of tomorrow. And so we do what the learning community is different in every district based on their goals, what they're going to use those spaces for and how they're going to use them. So as a part of our visioning, we ask questions for how they want to use these spaces, what's included in the learning community to help us really create a bespoke learning community that is going to work for you. So here's an example of, on the left, some of the questions that we ask. Pretty much how does collaboration work? What amenities do we want to include there? What size should they be? How many students are going to access them? Things like that. What things do you really need to heavily supervise? And then we design according to that. So out of the visioning sessions, we essentially developed 2 models based on age, a kindergarten and first grade wing, and then a second and third are gonna share, and a fourth and fifth are gonna share, and they'll stack, and I'll go over that in a second. And so they're slightly different models based on their different ages of teaching and how they wanna teach. All right, and then alongside all of the stakeholder engagement exercises, we also went through a thorough due diligence and analysis of the site. This helps us really figure out where are we putting the building and why, and making sure that we are making research-informed decisions as we develop this site plan. So I know everyone here is acutely aware of where the new Jackson will go, but I'll just review this for those online and watching. The project site is located on Jackson Drive, just south of Main Street. So here is current Jackson, and then here is the property line of where New Jackson will go, just north of the Jackson Area Community Center. I'm gonna go through these pretty quickly. The intent is really just to show you the high level of analysis that we've done, and obviously you can scrutinize this following this if you would like. So we analyze what's around the building. It's really important to us as we position the building to understand specifically what each area is zoned for. At a high level, there's a lot of residential, different types of residential, a little bit of manufacturing, some commercial, just primarily along Main Street. And then we have this kind of floodway wetland sliding through the north of the site, just north of the property line. There are some existing structures on site. So the Jackson Fire Department buildings, these 2 buildings right here, are vacant currently as they've moved to their new facility, and those will be demolished as a part of this process. And then, as I mentioned already, there's the community center to the south and some multifamily residential to the east. Within kind of the overall property line, or I should say just outside of our property line, but on the same block, there is a current residential house kind of takes a bite out of the site, which is impactful in our planning, so acknowledging that that is there and will stay. And then there's some existing vegetation. Fortunately, there's quite a dense row of trees surrounding that existing house, and then to the north along the wetland area, there's a density of trees there as well. This diagram really just refers to the buildable area. So as we analyze the zoning, we have to consider the setbacks via the zoning code. So this really shows where we can build. And then there are a few easements on the site as well, which essentially just means areas that we can't really build on as there's a city easement to access those areas. And then we analyze the site circulation. So where is the primary traffic coming from both a vehicular standpoint and a pedestrian standpoint? Students obviously are also traveling via bus and bike. Given the large thoroughfare of Main Street, most vehicular traffic will be coming from the north, with some coming from the south, and then some pedestrian traffic coming from both directions. There are some wetlands on the site, as I mentioned. Just to the north, there's a significant wetland, and then there's one just kind of east of the existing fire departments. That is actually an artificial wetland, which pretty much means it's just standing stormwater management that can be filled, and I mention that because we are going to position our building relatively close to that one, but that is okay and permissible to do. We also analyze view opportunities. Where are the great views that we want to position classrooms to access? And then where are the not so great views? And then what do the views of the site look like? How does it look as you approach it? So most notably, number one, as you approach the site from the north west, this is looking into the site. Obviously, these buildings will be coming down, but that's what it looks like. And then the rest kind of just give you a general look and feel of what things on the site feel like. We also consider the climate, winds, and daylighting as we position things. And that really informs how we position the building on the site. Are there any questions about that or the prior planning section before I move on? All right.
Quick question, the residents that it's kind of being built around, I assume the district did
We
approach?
reached out.
Okay.
Unfortunately. All right. So given all of those factors, we have positioned the general building to the north of the site. There's the best access to views of nature to the north of that. It has the most visibility from an entry perspective. And then most importantly, it offers the opportunity to access Spruce Street as an additional entry point to the site. And then lastly, by positioning it to the north, it allows the play area to be positioned behind the existing house and vegetation surrounding that. So it becomes a very secure play area that's then also adjacent to the community center for any synergies that might occur between the elementary school and the community center. So it seemed to be the best place to put the building. And then as we look at shaping the building, a couple of things to consider. So from an adjacency perspective. So near the secure play area, it's important to put the gym and any publicly accessed program there for that synergy between lunch and recess and indoor phy-ed and outdoor phy-ed. So it makes sense to put those things to the south. We wanted to prioritize the views on the site to instructional spaces. So we put the secure instructional spaces north of the site. The admin area, positioning that so it is closest to the entry and visibility. We out of the visioning session, as you heard, prioritizing the importance of the library and making that the center and hub of the school has always been a part of what we're doing, so putting that at the center. And then kind of creating this entry spine from east to west to leverage both entry from Jackson Drive and Spruce Street for an efficient circulation flow throughout the building. Buildings rarely work out to be a perfect rectangle for a variety of reasons. They have different volume requirements, different horizontal requirements, but most importantly because we want to integrate daylight. As everyone I'm sure has seen at the high school, that is a very compact building and there are a lot of classrooms that don't have daylight. So ensuring that you're separating the building enough so each instructional space has access to windows and daylight was an important part of this. And so we've done that here. And then we rotated the building slightly on the site to leverage different connection points and opportunities. So first, to make the building most visible from the primary access point, which is going to be the northwest corner from Jackson Drive. And then splaying the two wings of the courtyard, essentially, so that we're maximizing daylighting where possible there. And then what that also does is allows for an outdoor learning area courtyard between those two wings. We're maintaining that entry spine in the purple here you can see from east to west, where we then are able to have two separated parking locations, and we can clearly distinguish circulation flow, which I'll go over in a second. And then we've slightly offset where the admin area is from the gym so that it has this very clear view of the parent drop-off lane and then the visitor parking. So making sure, again, that safety and security is at the forefront in everything we're doing, even at this high-level massing of the building perspective. Essentially what that's resulted in terms of our site is a site with 4 zones. We have this visibility and entry zone. We have a views, privacy, and nature zone. We have a back of the building support area that's accessed from Spruce Street, and then a play area to the south. And this is what that looks like from an overall plan standpoint. So this is that primary east-west spine. And to the north of that, we have the core instructional spaces. The south, we have the gym and the cafeteria and back of house with the library at the center of the building. How circulation works is not totally different from what we showed pre-ref. There's some differences and some similarities. But parents will actually enter from the south of the site to maximize queuing so that we can get about about 60 cars from the entry point all the way to the main entry so that we're taking cars off of the street, and so we're not creating a traffic flow issue on Jackson Drive. Then there's a visitor parking lot adjacent to that where parents can park if they need to go in the building. And then buses and staff are separated from that. So again, focusing on that pickup and drop off so that we're making things efficient and easy for parents and staff. They're coming off of Spruce Street. There's a bus drop off loop, and then there's a staff parking lot for that back entry. And then we've designed the hardscape play area such that it can serve as an overflow parking area for events, and there could be a separate event entry that's directly into the cafeteria. So trying to maximize our resources and utilize the parking lot for both, or the asphalt area for both parking and play, and so we're not overbuilding parking. And then, again, thinking through the security strategy. So I'll start from the main entry on the left here. So again, that circulation spine with public access after hours to the gym, cafeteria, and library, and then a very concrete line of security to the instructional wings. And that is inclusive of the outdoor learning courtyard that we've created, and then a fence around the play area to protect students that are outdoors playing. And then this is an image of the overall conceptual floor plan showing you how these guiding principles are embedded in the design. So I've talked a lot about the safety and security and that being a priority. So organizing the building such that it is very safe. And that includes kind of that segmenting off of these security areas so that students can flow between the classrooms and the project-based learning breakout spaces without being within the line of security. That students can access that outdoor learning area and feel safe and secure in that environment as well. And then creating that welcoming and accessible experience and carrying over the culture of current Jackson into new Jackson by making the library the heart of the school. And then lastly, making the design adaptable and flexible for both the present and the future. So what that looks like is for the present, creating those flexible spaces just outside of the classrooms so that we can make smaller office space and have the resources come to students, and then they can also leverage that for project-based learning. creating spaces that can be used as bubble classrooms. So instead of overbuilding classrooms, creating multi-use spaces. So a space that's going to be adjacent to the library for project-based learning that may have some 3D printers and things in it, depending on what we end up designing there, but a hands-on learning space that can be leveraged as a bubble classroom. It will be within the line of security for this wing, so it can be in 1 year if you have a growth bubble, you can use it as a classroom, and we're going to do the same thing on the second floor. And then lastly, designing the building so that it is prepped for horizontal and vertical expansion. So this wing of the building, the kindergarten and first grade wing, is positioned on the site such that it could add 2 more classrooms just to the north if you have growth there. And then you'll notice this intentional notch out of the second and third and fourth and fifth grade wing that could add an additional 1 classroom there on the first floor and a classroom on the second floor should there be growth. And really that's about the amount of growth that can be accommodated in the building, meaning if you started to grow any more than that, your cafeteria would be too small and other admin resources would need to grow. So it's a reasonable amount of growth to expect within the constraints of the existing infrastructure, essentially. That was a lot. What questions do you have for me?
We'll move on to questions. Board members, questions?
I did have a question on what you kind of answered at the end there, I think, but the 4th and 5th grade classroom, that would be above the 2nd and 3rd on the 2nd floor? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
So we do have a 2-story building, but the entire footprint is not 2 stories. I'm going to go back to this diagram quickly. So this is a high-level massing diagram, as we call it, just shows you the volume of the building. This wing of the building is just 1 story. It's the kindergarten, first grade wing. And then this whole kind of L shape is 2 stories. And so 2nd and 3rd grade will be on the first floor here, and then 4th and 5th grade will be on the 2nd floor.
Joe?
It's kind of hard to tell how large the bus loop is. Is it going to be big enough that they can, whip a bus around pretty easily?
Yes, yep. Our civil engineer has designed the turning radius such that it will work. And it's designed to accommodate 3 buses. I actually think it can accommodate 4, but there are 2 lanes, so the buses can pull over and the staff can pass. And actually, that's similar to the parent drop-off lane. It's a 2-lane, so there's a passing lane, so parents can drive through if they need to and drop off in the other lane.
The concept you talked about, the kind of the service and the support area, does this building require something like a loading dock? Is that something that exists, or based on the function of this building, that's not something that's absolutely necessary?
You won't need a full loading dock, but we do have a receiving area. So right here, actually, it's going to be in this corner. The off of the bus loop will be an area where a truck can come and drop off deliveries, which is adjacent to the kitchen for serving, which is where primary deliveries are needed for, essentially.
And with some businesses, that loading dock is important, but I like that answer because they take up a lot of room.
Space, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They take up a lot of room, but that's been thought of, that the deliveries aren't necessarily mingling with kids getting dropped off by their parents.
Exactly. So it's obviously completely distinct from the opposite side of the building, and what we've learned is that only really happens once a day.
Thank you. Other questions?
Questions?
I just want to say I really appreciate you embedded this very deeply in your presentation, the district's values and vision and how it stitches together. I really appreciate that, and also I think we owe thanks to all of the staff members that participated in this process. I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot of great information, and these are very, very intriguing ideas. So it sounds like next steps we're gonna hear more toward the end of May. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Teeing out my next slide perfectly.
Oh, perfect. Sorry about
May
that.
20, no, no, you led right in. So yeah, on May 28th, we're going to come back to you and we're going to show you what does this really look like, both the exterior design and interior design, and then Findorf will be back to present where we're tracking in terms of the schematic design level budget. This just obviously was a lot of information for one night, so we wanted to separate it out into 2 meetings.
Excellent. Other questions or comments? Thank you for the thorough presentation. We certainly appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so
All
much.
right, we'll see you again future meeting in the near term. All right, next I believe is our superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Yeah, I would just echo the thanks for, when it came to Jackson, the whole staff's engaged, then there's kind of a representative team, kind of selected by their peers, that did a lot of work, and have been working on this for a long time. We did some engagement with our families, through survey, through some on-site opportunities, and always my favorite is to read what the kids wrote. And then at the other sites, you had, certainly not the whole building being touched, but those impacted by those classrooms. Jamie had gathered her team over at Rolf's, and what does that look like? And each office team gathered and talked about that sequence. So everyone's been highly engaged. So we echo that appreciation as well. Just a reminder that all things spring are in full swing. So last Friday was an example of a really busy night. We had our Dolphins synchronized swim team performance all weekend. We had a track meet hosted in the rain. We had, despite the rain, softball, our girls co-op soccer, everyone was competing. So just a reminder that everyone's invited to attend our athletic, music, and other events, and there's certainly some great capstone ones that occur in spring. So please check our district website as well as school calendars so you don't miss out on all of those opportunities. We will be sharing this in our district news, and then certainly our athletic directors will be communicating. But the WIAA had their 129th annual meeting, and they made some, I think, game-changing resolutions. So they will have impact on our student athletes. They approved the name, image, likeness opportunities for high school athletes, so NIL, which it's commonly referred to. They said that aligns Wisconsin with more than 40 other states, so students may now earn compensation based on their personal brand, provided the activities are not directly associated with their school, team, conference, or the WIAA. They talk about some safeguards that will be included in that. They also expanded summer coaching contact, so they voted that to expand that window for voluntary summer coaching, and that includes June 1 through June 30th, as well as July 7th through 31st, with a required no contact period from July 1 through 6. So football coaching must still conclude 1 week prior to the official start of practice. However, this really changes the landscape in a fundamental way. So our athletic directors will be learning more from the WIA around how they foresee putting these in place on behalf of our student athletes. They will then further meet with their conferences and kind of unpack that. And they will certainly be communicating directly with student athletes, families, as well as coaches. So I just wanted to share that pretty momentous changes. Again, we'll make sure and communicate with all families just for broad understanding, and then we'll unpack that further. But they are talking about the name, image, likeness rolling out in May. So that's right around the corner. Just a summer school reminder, all future registration for summer school for grades 4K to 7 should be completed by calling the summer school office. Our summer school is quite popular, so there are limited seats available in some classes. So if you missed that kind of big registration push, just give a call to that office and they can help you get registered. There's still plenty of availability at the high school level. There's in-person and virtual options. So again, check out that website and make sure you connect with us so we can get you registered. Also, I know Melanie's going to touch on this a little bit in her curriculum committee update, but I just wanted to call attention that beginning today, you have several potential new curriculum resources available for public review here at our Education Service Center, as well as the West Bend Community Library. So those are resources for video classes, Accounting 1 and 2, Computer Literacy, Automotive, AP Pre-Calculus, as well as AP American Government. See those times for review. Check that out on our website because they're dependent on some of our office hours, some of the library hours, and certainly Melanie will give us a little bit further update in her committee report. And just add to your calendars, 1 week from today, the West Bend School District Art Show begins at the Hub in West Bend, runs through May 31st. You can go there to see amazing pieces of art anytime the Hub is open. I'm always especially impressed with our art teachers and staff because they go in and reconceptualize how to reconfigure the entire hub for that show and how to display everything to that advantage. That is no easy feat in and of itself, let alone all of our talented students. But you might want to put on your calendar to go to the opening celebration event on Thursday, May 15th, 4:30 to 7 p.m. There's generally food trucks, other food available for purchase, and it's kind of a main event to kick off that. And then last week, Connor Trahan and Maximus Costa competed in the annual Waukesha County Technical College Automotive Competition and placed third out of 16 teams. For their efforts, both won more than $2,000 in tools and prizes, including a new Cornwell toolbox. So congratulations, and thank you for representing West Bend. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer? We appreciate your report. We will now move to the Curriculum Committee report, and our committee chair, Melanie Aragot, will give that report. Melanie.
All right. I will be providing the report from our Curriculum Committee meeting held on April 22nd. We are moving forward with public viewing for the following materials: career and technical education resources, AP Pre-Calculus, and AP Government materials. The CTE resource updates align with Moraine Park Technical College curriculum and include new materials for technical college credit video courses, accounting, computer literacy, and automotive courses. For AP Pre-Calculus, the recommendation is to continue using the book Mathematic AP Pre-Calculus, which has been successfully piloted since the transition from Honors Pre-Calc. For AP Government, staff recommended American Government Stories of a Nation for the AP course to replace the current 2014 textbook, which no longer aligns with updated AP requirements. These materials will be available for public viewing from April 28th through May 9th at the ESC and April 28th through May 11th at the Public Library. In addition, the Math 612 and ELA Grade 5 resource recommendations will proceed to the full board for discussion and action in May. Each received a public viewing period and no feedback was received. Finally, a fourth quarter English book club updates were discussed and will be communicated directly to families. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Melanie. Any questions regarding the Curriculum Committee report? All right, hearing none, we'll move on then. We move to discussion items on our agenda. First is a review of board operations, and Superintendent Wimmer, you're going to guide us through this one and some other ones, I think, as we take the opportunity for an annual reorganization.
Pretty much all your discussion items are aligned to when your new members take office. So that's the fourth Monday, and we'll discuss those items today, work through some things such as calendar, interest in positions, and then you'll act on some of those items that need action in the future. But that first item is reviewing board operations. So it's always nice to take a moment to reorient yourself to the 100 series of policies that kind of guide how board members work. We are a policy governance model, so you're governing through policy. And the 100 series is all about the board, how we set policy, what the different positions look like in the board, how we run. Some very critical pieces just to remind you of are around communications. We just spent a lot of time doing the update to 166, board member electronic communications, all of those pieces. So the other piece new to our board is Joe Pickler. He has spent hours, so I would have to commend him for his diligence in meeting not just with myself multiple times, but then also meeting with the different department leaders to get acclimated, ready to go. This was certainly part of that onboarding. So knowing everyone has some familiarity, are there any questions or any of the policies that the board wish to discuss further? Great. You can always ask at any time too. But it's just good practice to reorient where those are found and how to navigate them.
Great. So then, Superintendent Wimmer, can we move to the next agenda item?
Absolutely.
Which would be review board officers, terms, and election.
Correct. So going through, taken from that policy 141, it declares what those officers' roles look like, who they are, what the general duties are, and then the vice president and kind of that succession should the board president be out. So we always take an opportunity to review those different roles, and we will have that selection, election, if you will, at our next meeting. And that is the one time where you can actually vote with a ballot, and then we go through those pieces. So at this time, is there anyone who'd like to express interest in any of those roles?
Yes, I'd be interested in the treasurer role. I think June's done a fine job, but it's kind of my professional wheelhouse, financial reporting and analysis, so I'll throw my
Great.
hat in the ring.
Sure. And June, do you have continued interest in serving? I mean, we could do it by ballot, but you can think about that a little bit too. So, excellent. Good.
I'd be interested in running again for vice president.
Okay. Melanie, how about clerk? Are you interested in that?
Yes, I'd
Okay.
be interested in continuing in that role.
If the board would have me, I'd be fine continuing to serve as president. Sounds like we've all expressed interest in something here. So,
Excellent. It's not your only opportunity. If you think about that, and all of a sudden you wake up and think, I really would like to go for that, it's not a problem. Just let us know, so you can be prepared to, again, have that process formalized at our next meeting for organization. So thank you for expressing interest in those positions.
Then we can move on to reviewing the board committee and delegate assignments.
Excellent. So in addition to those formalized roles, we have multiple delegate assignments. So the first is our Cooperative Education Service Agency, or CESA. We're part of CESA 6, and we seek representation there. Currently, Chris Jenkins is our representative for CESA 6. Not sure if you have continued interest that you'd like to express?
I would be happy to and continue to give Ted a hard time.
And Ted is deserving of a hard time. Ted was a former superintendent here as well, so we do like to do that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Another delegate assignment is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, WASB Convention. That's generally held in Milwaukee in January. The entire board participates in that in December when they release those resolutions. And then June has served in that role for multiple years, going to that convention and then representing the district on multiple pieces. June, are you interested in continuing?
Yes, I'd love to continue that role.
Okay. Head Start, unique to us, we run our own Head Start. Sometimes that's a different agency, so we're one of the few districts who run that. It has its own board, then falls under our umbrella of a board as well. So certainly we see procedural items, but that is influenced by their board. Melanie, you're currently serving on the Head Start board. Would you like to continue in that, or?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
this makes it really easy. Then we foreshadowed last time, County Executive Showman had reached out regarding a task force that he's going to be putting together regarding the property around Fair Park Elementary School. Knowing that's a property that is going to be closing, he is seeking representation on that. I think Chris Jenkins had expressed some interest in that. Is there anyone else expressing interest in that?
What I can also do in the meantime is we had verbal discussion. I'll try to get something in writing so that we just make sure what that exactly is. So whoever decides to accept it knows what they may be getting into.
Right, we're meeting 4 nights a week until 9, right?
Fairness.
We thought maybe we get that sooner, but I'm sure we'll get that understanding so you know what that commitment looks like a little bit earlier. Another piece structurally is we operate by committee. So we're a board that meets twice a month because we're generally following a committee of the whole format. Instead of having you sit on 5 different committees, you sit on policy committee. We've got everything updated, so we meet about quarterly on that. The curriculum meetings are occurring monthly right now. And then most other items, like what you saw tonight, instead of that going to a facilities segregated committee, it's coming to the whole board for review and discussion. And then you're able to then take action on that. So kind of first, we recommend continuing with that format. I think it's working really well. It's being respectful of your time as board members, that you can't sit on too many committees. So if that format works, is there anyone who?
I mean, I think personally that format has worked, but I'm certainly interested in hearing other thoughts. Many of those items, I mean, when we think, for instance, about a facilities committee and we think about this project that we have in front of us with the referendum project, from a size perspective, we'd be repeating it back here anyway, so it
Everything
seems
flows
like
up.
it's working.
Yeah, and even, so policy, we got to the point where we're meeting quarterly, and I'm sure as we kind of work through and clean up our curriculum renewal cycle and some of those big rocks, we might be able to, tighten up our schedule in that as well. I'll work with the committee on those. With that said, for those two committees, anyone express interest in the policy committee?
I would be,
I'm continuing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
I'd be willing to take Mr. Donaldson's spot if needed.
Thank you.
I'd be willing to serve on that committee as well.
Perfect.
And I would as well. And there really is no maximum, is there? So,
We were laughing. We're like, are all the boys signing up for one committee and all the girls the
Yeah,
other?
we are.
Like, okay, not a problem. Great, then I will work with those who are expressing interest. Currently, we declared kind of a quarterly based on our schedules, so I'll wrangle that. We've met generally from 4 to 6, so I'll work with that, those who have expressed interest and kind of project that, and then we can go from there on that calendar. Anyone interested in the curriculum committee?
well, let's see.
Happy to continue in that
Great.
committee.
And June, are you interested?
Yes, I'm interested in that.
Same, I'll go to
Okay.
my side of the gym.
Right. I'm like, thanks, ladies. We'll do that same, and like I said, when we've got some meetings on the books, but we might be able to kind of look at our schedule as we pace that work out ahead, so that would be good.
Let's be honest, one of those committees work a little harder than the other, right?
There's
Yes, your
there's
curriculum
truth.
committee does.
Yes, correct.
You do a lot of work.
But they might be getting to that point where they're so efficient and effective that we might be able to tighten up that a little bit too. Then we also look to formalize graduation ceremony representatives. So your job is really feeding diplomas, being present on stage during those presentations. So if there's anyone who would like to represent the board at the West graduation.
I would do that.
Thank you. And we can have multiples, that's fine, you just sit on stage.
I'm fine serving at either or none, depending on if others have specific interests.
Perfect.
Same.
As well, flexible? Okay, 3
So wherever I need to
flexible.
assign you, anyone specifically interested in East? Great. So I'll just pick 2 of you
Flexible.
for East. Anyone? That time is a little bit later for East. Anyone prefer that later time, 4:30, and then,
Either are fine for me.
perfect. How about we split up the ladies? So that we're not- Any preference, either one?
I can do West.
Perfect. All right, so we've got Kelly and Chad at West, and East would be Chris and Melanie.
Great.
And I will get that out and on your calendars for you. And certainly other members, if something frees up and you'd like to be added to that, just let me know.
So I'll just share my hesitation is my son has a baseball tournament, and you don't know when they're playing on Sunday until the night before, so.
No worries.
If I can show up last minute, I might be able to.
That's also fine.
Great. That's
But
good.
it is exciting. Your face literally hurts at the end of those from just smiling so much at your graduates as they're walking across the stage and recognizing their accomplishments, especially if you're like me and you're doing them back to back. So it's just one of those. But yeah, thank you for your representation. Also, we have a lot of spring activities. We'll have Project Search graduates, which is an off-site program. We'll have things like the military signing. We'll have grad walk opportunities. So we'll continue to share those with the board for representation of well. I know everyone's really proud of our students, their accomplishments, and appreciative of the staff and all their efforts as kind of some of those culminating activities come to fruition. Then if you're ready, I can move us
Yes.
on to calendar.
Let's move to school board meeting calendar, 2025, 2026.
Great. So we worked really hard on the calendar last year just to make something that works. So the first thing in looking at the calendar is to discuss, do Mondays work for the team? Anyone want to propose a different date at all? Day of the week, I should say. Great. Mondays work. We've always started at 5:30. Is that a continued time that could work for the team?
Okay.
Great,
Seems we're
almost
in-
making it too easy, friends. This will be the hard part. We follow a mixed calendar. We do the first and third, or the second and fourth. We do a little mix just to honor other commitments and some schedules on those pieces. We've mocked up those calendars, and just seeing if there's any preference, any conflicts for either. I know last year, we were working out some pieces, and I actually worked with a couple people individually. So is there anything that anyone's gravitating towards or some certain things to avoid?
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, our general rule, and we do have a mixed schedule, but we try to do first and third, I think, but then sometimes there
It
are some
switches,
holidays, so it
yeah.
switches around.
So, yep,
And
we would-
likely, go ahead.
We would do that, but it switches around. We had some conflicts last year, and we've never had just one consistent pattern. I inherited one that wasn't consistent. And as long as we're acting on that calendar, we're creating that, and we're communicating with our public so that we're aware. We switched about mid-year this year, and then it was consistent thereafter. So it didn't mix, every other week was following a different pattern by any sense. So again, we haven't had any problem or feedback doing that, so I'm very open to creating that if needed. But just, is there any gravitation towards one or the other model?
Melanie?
I'm just going to say that I can do either.
Great.
I say generally speaking, I can do either. There may be a few here or there. If it's better or worse to do, for whatever reason, I might prefer the first and third as the normal, but my thought would be I can adapt with this much advance notice. And I think there's not an expectation that you must attend 100% of all meetings.
Correct.
So
Certainly, we respect a lot of, people have work or travel obligations. You just let us know. We can patch you in virtually, as you see, as Dr. Temez is doing, or there's certainly absence and excuse. So if we were to look at that first and third model, that would work for everyone?
So I was going to say that the mixed calendar that you have, I mean, I know that I was a part of the hassle of making this calendar the way that it is, and I personally think that it reflects at least a little bit easier for me with my conflicts. So if we're able to keep the half a year one and then the other half of the year the other, that allows at least me personally to be at more meetings.
Knowing that was a piece of that, why don't I connect with you, and we can kind of look at which months that makes most sense for and bring back a proposal to the team.
Well, I was going to say that what you have laid out, I think, works out pretty well here for the same. I don't remember what the break was in the middle of the year. We can figure
Sure.
that out. But
Okay, why don't I draft that and
Yep.
send that to you for review, so you can just triple check for any conflicts before I
that's
ask
fine.
everyone to take action.
Sounds good.
Perfect, I will follow that model.
So this will come up for action then at our next
Correct.
meeting, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Great. Any other questions on the calendar? All right, hearing none, we are going to move then to our action items tonight. We have our first action item, 2025-2026 staffing plan, and Mr. Lenny Hansen, our Assistant Superintendent, is going to walk us through that. Mr. Hansen, good evening to you.
Good evening. All right. So at the last board meeting, we had a presentation around staffing plan. We've actually had several discussions about this. So I'm going to review some process pieces there and talk about how this plays out a little bit before I take questions and then present this for action from the board. So always review, why are we talking about staffing plan now? So there's a few reasons. First reason is that the state statute requires school districts to offer contract renewals to teachers by the end of April. Obviously, we are at the end of April, so this is the common time when you see school districts across the entire state approving staffing plans so then they can move forward with contract renewals for certified staff and teachers, which, as you see on the agenda, is the very next agenda item after this one. So that, in a way, binds districts to a certain general timeframe. That being said, staffing is an ongoing live process, and I'm going to talk about that momentarily here. The other piece that we always like to reinforce is that staffing is not done in a vacuum. It's a pretty large, comprehensive team process, follows some established processes that have been in place for well over a decade in the district, between collaboration between those on the curriculum and instruction, learning side, student services side, human resources, business office. All of those pieces are coming together alongside site leaders from the different schools to talk about where registrations are, where their needs are, and all of that comes together. It's actually several months of work that come forward with this plan. That being said, the document you see before you, the staffing plan, is not a final document. It is a living document. It adapts regularly to fluctuations in enrollment, fluctuations in registration. So, at your particularly at your elementary level, and then at the intermediate level as well, you do see staffing more driven by just overall enrollment. And then as you move into that secondary level at middle and high school, registration for specific courses is what then tends to drive everything. We monitor those fluctuations on a weekly basis. We are in contact regularly with the principals and administrative assistants at the schools, as well as with the district registrar, where all entries into the district as well as exits from the district flow through, so that we are constantly monitoring, adapting, and preparing for any scenarios where some changes may need to take place. As far as how number of sections, class sizes are determined, it's based on some long-term historical norms, that ranges that have been used for well over a decade here in the district, as well as board policy that's been in place for more than a decade. We regularly look at what sort of class size ranges our neighboring districts and other similar districts are using to make sure that we're in the range of what you would see typically for other school districts in the area. We really dive deep to understand the data. So we actually track the cohort data, and I'll explain what that is, over a long period of time. So we will look at a specific school, at all schools. So for example, we might look at Decorah and say, okay, the last 3 years on average, a Decorah second grade, as it goes to third grade, does it tend to gain students, lose students? What is the trend? And we do that for every grade at every building and review those typical norm ranges that you see to identify kind of min and max estimates and different scenarios that would go with that. And then we apply that as well to the enrollment information that we have at that time. So it's not just where we look at on this moment in time, on this day, what's the enrollment? That's where we're at, done deal. That's not how we look at it. We look at a lot of data points to have that all kind of come together to give us our best starting point for a staffing plan, knowing throughout the remainder of the spring and the summer, we can adapt as we go along. It's always important to note that a staffing plan is not based on things like sudden budgetary restrictions or budget cuts. That's not what drives a staffing plan in any way. Staffing plan is driven by enrollment, registration, while staying within the typical constraints of a budget, right? But if you see certain reductions, things like that in any one area in the staffing plan, it's not the type of thing that's, oh, well, there had to be a budget cut, because that's not what this document reflects. This document reflects the application of long-established process for how we provide staff throughout the district. A good example that I can kind of talk through that we got a few questions about of where all of this analysis kind of comes together is, for example, at Jackson. So we have a third grade group that is going to condense in the staffing plan at this time from 3 sections, where it currently is, down to 2 sections for next year. That's not uncommon. We actually most commonly see kind of contracting from more sections to fewer sections as we go from second to third grade, because those long-established trends of class sizes change at that point from a general maximum of 24 for those kindergarten through second grade to 28 for the older grades. So you tend to very often see that contraction down from second to third grade. However, sometimes what happens is we will see a large number of withdrawals from the district in a particular class late in the game. So, which is actually what happened with this class. So for example, what happened is in August of last year, we saw quite a few students withdraw from that particular cohort. Sometimes it just happens, you can't, there's a variety of reasons, but more than is commonly seen for that Jackson second to third grade group. In fact, we had a net loss of 11 students in that cohort late in the summer. So certainly we could have contracted those classes at that point, but at the same time, you've already offered contracts to teachers. Teachers by state law have to be issued a contract. So once you've issued those contracts, that staff member is employed by the district for the year regardless, right? So making those kind of late game decisions is less common. It can be done. There are plenty of neighboring districts who do that a lot. But in this case, we ended up holding, also kind of wondering if maybe some of those students would swing back. So anyways, we ended up at that number and pretty much continued right around that number for the remainder of this year. So now when we look at those ratios, it would fit that historical trend where we would contract down a class. Now, that being said, like I indicated earlier, we will be monitoring those registrations at that school and especially that grade level especially closely so that we can adapt if such a need arises. We also, when we look at that cohort data, for example, if we're going to apply that logic in this specific example, the cohort of 3rd to 4th grade at Jackson, for example, tends to lose 4 to 5 students in a typical summer. They've lost as many as 7 in the last few years, or as few as 3, but never less than 3 as kind of a cohort, transition from across the summer. So we keep that in mind as well. Okay, we don't count on that, but it is something that we monitor because if that cohort data, for example, had shown that they tend to pick up a certain number of students, that would influence those decisions as well. We have hired staff as late as midsummer before when we've seen an influx of students. So in this case or other cases, we are always ready to pivot and are always putting together those hypothetical scenarios and what we would do in such situations.
I appreciate kind of the in-depth and really calling out. I know that I myself received communication from families, as did our board, wondering around that, and even Lenny himself. And so we reached back out to Darcy Van Addestein, the principal, to make sure she was included in that loop. And then I've had some conversations with PTO leadership, just gathering kind of what maybe rumors or questions were lingering out there, because some of them were certainly dispelled. They were thinking that it was a budget reduction. It had to be held this. I'm like, no, go out and help us get over the line to get that section. They talked about the teacher, would that teacher be offered that opportunity to come back? We're like, that would be great. And they certainly are offered that. So right now we're working on a communication tailored just to the 3rd grade group of families that kind of gathers that. So we're running that by our, like I said, PTO leadership, the principal, myself, just to, have we captured some of those pieces? Have we alleviated some of the worry? Because, they've been accustomed to, 17 in a class and kind of looking at what does that look like, because it's unknown to them. But more solidly, how are we helping Darcy with the recruitment efforts so that we can continue to monitor, and if get that section going, then we can get it going sooner rather than later. So we'll be finalizing that and sending that out to families directly too. So I appreciate that. It's certainly not just a Jackson issue because it's a process that affects everyone, but I know many people reached out, and I know the board would want to make sure that we're communicating directly back too.
I was just going to say, I'll echo that because I appreciate the good communication and the follow-up because folks that communicate questions, I thought they were good questions. And so thank you for engaging and sharing information. And
So some
more
of
to
those
come.
other pieces that we share in those conversations, whether it's about that example or other examples, some of those contingency plans that we have in place. So like I said, we have hired teachers as late as middle to late summer before. That happens if it's needed, and we will do so. The other thing is we're very fortunate here in our district to have classroom aides at our elementary schools as well. So we are able to strategically allocate classroom aide time. Sometimes we increase that time when we're pushing some larger sections in different areas. While that certainly isn't the same as a teacher by any means, it does provide some helpful support in a variety of different situations where maybe they're teetering on that edge as well. We're also very fortunate to have a really comprehensive student services team at all of our schools. So we really work hard to ensure that those schools right now for next year are going to continue with a full-time psychologist, full-time school counselor, full-time family liaison, so that you have that student services wrap around ready to support any needs in a classroom or needs that a teacher could use assistance with as well. We also provide reading and math support at our schools, and that is not allocated based on number of sections. We allocate and have for some time allocated reading and math support based on student needs. The curriculum instruction team will look at assessment results at each school and look at where there are greater needs, more needs, and so forth, and then allocate those reading and math intervention supports based on that. So that is not allocated in any way based on sections. So when, whether you end up with 2 sections, 3 sections, 4 sections is not going to influence how those resources are allocated. So that's kind of a summary of that whole process. Hopefully I've given you a picture of the deep work that goes into that. We really try to provide a lot of opportunity for the sites and the site leadership to influence that as well. And now we would recommend a approval of the staffing plan for the 2025-2026 school year.
Can I just ask one more question about that, the Jackson situation? So I think it makes sense to me, based on the established maximums. I'm just wondering if that's a hard cap, because I see where the projected enrollment is kind of butting up against that, where if 2 more students were added, we would be exceeding 28. So would we then be adding another section at that point?
So we will continue to monitor it. We would be adding, if we're going to be over our 28 number and we feel that that is coming to fruition, we would be adding. That is why it's important for us to be in that regular communication with the district registrar, because enrollments may be calling the school to set up tours and say, yeah, we're coming, but withdrawals all come through the district office, right? So we have to make sure those 2 pieces are communicating, because sometimes you talk to the school, oh, I gave another tour, yeah, but 3 kids also moved away. So we have to make sure that balances. But if we're trending to be over our number, then we're going to look to move someone into that position. We do, like I said, look at that historical cohort information. So that that'll influence us to some degree about how quickly you want to strike upon that. But yeah, we don't want to run. I know the superintendent spoke with some parents are like, we're not going to run elementary classes of 30 kids. We don't believe in that. So, that's why we monitor it so closely.
Yep, thank you.
And I was just going to ask, page 16 of your slide with the support staff, the biggest loss that I see, again, if I didn't know about the operation, is in special education. So I see that you're dropping, was it 6 full-time employees? I guess, coming out of COVID, obviously we saw the increase in need for aides and special education support and all that stuff. What's driving that decrease now? Is it just actual less students that have less recordable?
You want to speak to that a little bit?
I can speak to it for sure, but
Go for it.
So I'll lead off, and then if the superintendent has other things that she wants to add, absolutely. So
I used to be a student services director,
So Mrs. Melstrand, our Director of Student Services, her team meets with the operations side several times throughout the year, and we review student services needs actually from a couple of different lenses. And it's really based on what the numbers say. So we look at it from both a head count, so number of students in need of those services, and then we also look at what is called the matrix, which is a DPI formula that DPI uses, puts out across the state. To measure, the types of needs students need, the amount of support that's needed for those various needs. The page you're referencing is talking about support staff in special education, so I want to make that clear. Certified is at a different spot in the plan, but based on the matrix and headcount information that Mrs. Melstrand's team has at this time, it would indicate that is the paraprofessional / instructional tech support that's needed for special education next year. So again, based on, and you see you see all kinds of trends. You might see overall enrollment go down, but in a year, while at the same time special education enrollment or needs go up, or vice versa. That happens every year. You can't, we've learned you can't make assumptions about what you're going to need in each of these program areas based on the overall trend. So that being said, we continue to communicate regularly with students' services throughout the summer as well. They monitor every time there's a new enrollment, they'll receive that IEP paperwork about that student. They'll analyze it, plug it into that DPI formula, and then inform us if we need to look at some staffing adjustments. Superintendent, did you have anything to add there?
No, just I think the takeaway is to know and understand that you're looking at a caseload and you're being driven with special education service by IEP team decision. So each one is a individualized education program program, that parents are part of that team to determine what those needs are. So we need to make sure we're meeting those. And just that understanding that, again, it's a little different than going, okay, we have a class of 25 and it's packaged, because the needs can range. I could have students who have severe medical needs, significant learning needs, and we just look at and analyze by caseload.
Yeah, and I get all that. I just want to clarify and make sure that the number of cases are increasing, but we're still going to decrease our support staff, right? So, and I understand there's a balance to that, so.
Well,
I'm
you
good.
bring up a good point, so, and we've talked about this at this podium before, so even our, on average, right, over several years, the rate at which special education enrollment has decreased has not been as quick or rapid as the overall enrollment. So, which would indicate as a percentage of our population, special education is increasing, right? So you don't see a perfect linear correlation between the two. I will also say that area is probably the one that fluctuates the most between now, when this is approved, and when we get to September 1st and we start school. And that's why we keep in such regular communication with student services.
Other questions? Hearing none, this is an action item. So I'd move to approve the 2025-2026 staffing plan as presented. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Melanie. We have a motion and second to approve the 25-26 staffing plan as presented. Any final discussion?
I would like to just say as a discussion item for this before we vote, I plan to support the plan, but I did just want to make sure that that all the parents who reached out understand that their voices are heard and we understand the situation. And I just want to make sure that this is something that continues to stay fluid, and that we're ready to act and to lower those class sizes should we reach that bump up against that cap. And I just don't want people to think that their emails were just sent into the void. So
Thank you. Chad?
and I appreciate direct communication back to those families, explaining the situation in more detail and kind of with comparison to other districts and things like that. I think that's important information for parents to have.
Agreed. All right, so we have a motion and second. Any final discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Dr. Temez?
Yes.
Ms. Kruger? Yes. Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Ms. Aragot? Yes. And Mr. Pickler?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Appreciate your work on that. And Mr. Hanson, we have another action item, 2025-2026 employee contract renewals.
Yep, I'll be much more brief on this one, because really, like I said, this really just flows into the action item you just voted on. Now that the staffing plan is approved, we recommend contract renewals for all of the employees that are presented here, which is 398 certified staff members. Like I previously said, the district needs to make a decision on contract renewals by April 30th of each year, so we're right up to that time, in that moment in time. Fortunately, through attrition, the district was able to accomplish the reductions that are necessary, just in terms of just the general enrollment decline trend. So no layoffs are recommended as part of this of these renewals for certified staff. So we're able to offer a renewal to every certified staff member who has expressed a intent and desire to return. So all of these renewals are recommended for approval today, and then if approved, those would go out probably in the next week or so to all of those employees.
Board members, any questions on the information that Mr. Hanson has presented around the contract renewals? Hearing none, I would move to approve the 2025-2026 employee contract renewals as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. We have a motion and second to approve the 25-26 employee contract renewals as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Ms. Kruger? Yes. Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Dr. Temez?
Yes.
Mr. Pickler?
Yes.
Ms. Aragot?
Yes.
And Mr. Swigert votes yes. That motion carries as well. Mr. Hanson, thank you for your presentations tonight.
Thank you.
We move to future agenda items in our board meeting calendar. On our board meeting calendar, I'll read off the upcoming meetings in May. all of which are scheduled to take place here at the Education Service Center. On May 6, Policy Committee meeting at 4 p.m. May 12, regular board meeting at 5:30 p.m. On May 20th, the Curriculum Committee meeting, 4:30 p.m. May 27, regular board meeting, 5:30 p.m. We just remind the public to check for the official postings just in case the date or the time or the location may have changed.
I just have one question. We have May 6th already posted for our team and our meeting that comes before reorganization. I'd certainly like to work with all who have expressed interest in being part of that committee. So if the board doesn't have objection, we can continue to hold that. I can check with new members, and I'd like to have full participation. Is there anyone who would like us to reschedule after we formalize those assignments?
I think we're okay if we have those
Great.
who
I just wanted to
have interest to
confirm that would be
proceed.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Other questions on the board calendar? All right, moving on. Any items for follow-up and communication? The one item, I guess, that I had, Superintendent Wimmer, we're coming up, I know we're going to be talking back with our construction partners on budget, and I'll just be very interested in their take on, there's obviously a lot of very interesting stuff going on in the economy, and so I would hope that they would at least address that. I'm guessing that that is, can be taken for granted, but I'll just express that.
They're highly aware and engaged in that. We talked about, do we want to get into that this first time, save it for a little bit of the second? So I think as we get a little bit closer to some numbers that get solidified, they could talk about their efforts, not just in a kind of regular climate, but some things that are top of mind around potential impacts on lead times, tariffs, et cetera, and costs. So we'll incorporate that into the discussion.
Perfect. And others may agree or disagree. I'm flexible as to the timing, just as long as they're cognizant of it and they address it.
Very.
Great. Any other items for follow-up and communication? Hearing none, we have reached the end of our planned agenda, and so I would move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Motion and second to adjourn. Any final discussion? All right, hearing none, I will call the roll. Dr. Temez?
Yes.
And Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Ergot? Yes. Mr. Pickler?
Yes.
Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Kruger? Yes. And Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you to all those who participated or attended in person or remotely, and we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. And congratulations.